So the comparative sac is coming up for you guys. For me, I found that the comparative was the most difficult section. I found it really hard to compare two texts under strict time conditions. However, I did manage to score full marks in both the sac and the exam, and today I'm going to share with you how. Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. For those of you who are new here, my name is Darren and I'm a second year med student studying at Monash University here in Melbourne, Australia. VC wise, I graduated in 2020 with an ATAR of 99.95. Please check out my last video if you haven't already. I answered a bunch of questions that you guys sent in, and there will likely be questions that are pretty applicable to everyone, and I timestamped all of them anyway, so just go in there and have a look if there are any questions that you would also like to know the answer to. So today's video is focused on the comparative. I have a bunch of comparative videos out already. One in particular is where I break down my own essay, and I feel like that would be incredibly helpful if I was redoing VC all over again. But today's video is focused on how I would prepare, or how I advise you guys to prepare for the comparative sac. Today's video will be broken down into 4 sections. In the first section, I'll be going over some basics. So these are things that I would advise you to do to prepare for all the English sacs, not just the comparative. And the next 3 sections will be more focused towards the comparative. So out of the last 3 sections, the first one of those is about breaking down your text into themes. The second one is about planning for essay topics. And the last section is about writing paragraphs from memory. Enjoy. Alright, so first off we have the basics. These are things I'd advise you to do for all your English sacs, not just the comparative. And the first of these basic methods is to go through your text again. So this can be rereading your text or rewatching it, but it can also be just going through a comprehensive summary of it. The important point is that you're able to see the text as a whole, see how all the events connect chronologically again, and just have an awareness of the text as a whole. Because in your preparation, you will have focused on very specific moments, you may have focused on very specific themes, and it's probably been a while since you viewed the text in its order as it's written. And I feel like just looking at the text and rewatching it would just give you a better appreciation of it as a whole. And there are 2 specific benefits to rereading your text. And the first benefit is that you might find some good moments or some good quotes that you missed that you would like to incorporate, and you should have enough time to incorporate them in. And the second benefit is that you just have a better understanding of the text in its entirety. You can go into the sac much more confident because yes, you've delved very deeply into specific moments in your writing, but you also kind of know like the whole storyline. So if you're pushed to, you can draw upon other aspects of the text as well. The second basic method takes a bit more time, and it's about improvement. So as I've said, in English, you really want to make sure you're improving in between pieces. And the way to do this is to take on appropriate amounts of feedback each time. You don't want to be trying to do too much because you won't remember all of it. And you also don't want to feel like you have a ton of time left as well. So you want to pick out of the important pieces of feedback, pick out 1 or 2, and also pick out some easy to incorporate feedback. Put those into your piece, hand it into your teacher. If they're happy with it, then add some more feedback the next time that you do another piece. I get a lot of questions from people who ask me, "Oh, Darren, I'm getting like 7 out of 10, and I want to get a 9 out of 10. How do I get there?" And I seem to be stuck. So I don't have your piece in front of me. I'm also not your teacher who will actually be marking your sac and your writing. But what I recommend to all these people is that you get that 7 out of 10 piece, you take a paragraph out of it, you change it, you incorporate whatever your teacher has said, you give it back to your teacher. They might give you a 7.5, you give it back, blah, 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 etc., until you get the mark you want. Keep doing that process until you get the mark you want. And then in between that draft and that piece where you received your desired mark, whatever you changed is what you should be doing in your entire piece, and is also what will elevate you to that 9 out of 10. I think it's really just persistence. People ask me like, I'm not getting the marks I want, how do I get it? Just keep giving it into your teacher. Keep changing up that same paragraph, because that way you will literally see what you're changing each time and what your teacher's looking for. And that way you will know what you should be doing in your next piece. And to consolidate for your next assessment, you should take on board all that you have learned from fixing that one paragraph and incorporate it into a whole essay next time. And hopefully you will receive the same mark from your teacher as well. So ultimately, those two are the basic methods that I would advise you guys to do to prepare for the SAC. One is to go through your texts again, and two is to relentlessly change and improve your work until you are receiving the marks that you want. Now we're on to the preparation methods that are a bit more specific to the comparative. And the first of these is themes. The reason why themes are so amazing for the comparative is that you have two texts and it sometimes gets a bit difficult to sort of think about them both simultaneously. And I feel like themes just gives me a really great framework for that, because I have that core theme and then I think about which moments from each of the texts speaks to that theme. And also I think about whether one moment might speak to multiple themes and what it says about each of those themes. It just provides a really lovely framework for your planning and just your preparation in general. So I'd advise you to have a think yourself, to grab some from your teacher, or to plan some with a friend as well. For me, my school provided a list of themes for us, which I found was really helpful. And so my texts were Ransom and the Queen, and the core themes are not limited to, but include change, leadership, grief, and storytelling. And you can see that, you have an entire movie, 2-hour movie or something, and you have quite a sizable novel, but it can be broken down into those 5 or 6 themes that are relevant to both. And that gives me a much easier way of thinking about my text and also preparing for the SAC and the exam. The next method is planning. For me, this was the most helpful and the most important part of my preparation. Now, I was always really paranoid that there would be a topic on the SAC or on the exam that I had never seen before and would be stumped about. That was sort of my nightmare of what might happen in English and was probably my greatest fear, I guess, in English. And the way to combat this was through planning. So there are 3 benefits to planning. The first benefit is that planning saves time. You don't always have time to write a full essay, and writing an essay takes a lot of effort as well. And so planning is a really efficient way of making sure you've covered all your bases, because you can look at a great variety of topics in a very short period of time. And the second benefit of planning is that it helps you identify patterns. So for me, and you can check out some of my past videos, I've found that a lot of the topics for my text were quite similar, and like the sequence of my paragraphs would also be quite similar. And it was through planning that I noticed that. I feel like if you write an essay, maybe like 3 or 4 essays in your comparative unit, you won't really notice these patterns because you're spending a lot of time on each essay. There's a lot of time in between you writing each essay as well. But with planning, you just go bang, 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 and suddenly you realize that a lot of the moments and a lot of the paragraphs are actually quite linked. And the third benefit of planning is that it gives you confidence and comfort. Because you look at such a diverse range of topics, I just found comfort in the fact that I was able to plan quite quickly and I was becoming more efficient as I planned. And it was also good to look at before my SAC and before my exam, because I was scrolling through it. I was like, all right, I've prepared quite comprehensively for all these topics. What's the chance of there being just some random topic on the exam or on the SAC? It's quite low. And the way I planned was that I would get on a call with, I think, 3 of my friends actually. And this was during COVID times, so we couldn't really meet up in person. And we would just go through different topics and plan them out in terms of our topic sentences and also what moments we would use for each body paragraph. And yeah, that was just an incredibly helpful step. I recommend planning. I highly, highly recommend it to all of you watching. The final way in which I recommend you prepare for your comparative SAC is through writing paragraphs from memory. So you can do these 2 ways. You can write them under timed conditions or untimed conditions, and you would use those for different purposes. So you would write untimed paragraphs. For me, I would write untimed paragraphs when I was exploring a certain moment or a particular kind of sub-theme that I hadn't explored before. So this was more just for me to get my teacher's feedback. I'm not going to write an entire essay just for one new moment. So I would write one paragraph and then hand it in to my teacher and see what they think about it. And this was also kind of good for checking my quote knowledge as well, because the best way to memorize quotes is not just to write down a bunch of quotes, in my opinion. It's to try and incorporate them into your paragraphs and your sentences. Now, as for timed paragraphs from memory, I feel like they serve 2 really useful purposes. One is timing. You can kind of see how much you're able to write in a specific period of time, which is incredibly useful in English, where it's a really time-tight subject, especially the end of your exam, where you only get a measly 3 hours to write 3 essays. Now, these timed paragraphs are also really good as confidence boosters. You can keep writing them, but once you're able to write them quite fluently, especially on themes that you're really confident about, you will feel much better about yourself, because you're like, hey, I can write these paragraphs quite quickly, I can produce them well, I can write quotes down without needing to refer back to the book, and I feel like that this just, gives me a lot of confidence. So if you do that, especially a little bit before the SAC or the exam, I feel like it will boost you up a bit, because you're sort of sitting a mini SAC yourself and you are able to do it quite well. Here's a bonus tip for you guys. This is applicable to all your English SACs, but actually to all of your subjects. And this is to know your timings. I can't stress enough how important this is. I would stick really, really rigorously to my timings. You really want to know how much time you're going to spend on your planning, on your intro, on each of your 3 body paragraphs, and also your conclusion. So find out how much time you're allowed in your comparative SAC. Let's say it was 1 hour 30. And then you would break it down like this. Let's say there was no reading time. So in 1 hour 30, I would spend 10 minutes on planning. So that's 1 hour 20, 10 minutes on the intro. So that's 1 hour 10. And then I would spend 20 minutes on each of the body paragraphs. That takes me down to 10 minutes. And the conclusion plus checking over my work. Conclusion usually takes me like 5 minutes. I find conclusions much easier to write than intros. And then I have 5 minutes to sort of read over. And with my timings, if I was ever above, if I was doing better than the timing, so for example, I allocated myself 20 minutes and I did it in 18 minutes, I wouldn't spend 2 minutes looking over the previous paragraph, I'd just move on. But the main thing here is that you don't ever want to be behind your timings. So figure out what timings you're comfortable with, you're happy with. You can write timed paragraphs, whatever, to help you figure that out, and then stick to those timings in the SAC and also later in the year for your exam as well. Thanks for tuning into today's video. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope the first 1 to 2 weeks of school have been going well for you guys. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. Otherwise, good luck for your SACs and your academia and your other pursuits as well. And I look forward to seeing you all next time.